then went missing early Tuesday morning during routine operations, as the U.S. and Japan are holding joint drills in the region. The Japanese Navy says the two nations have called off their operation to focus on searching for the missing sailor, engaging vessels as well as helicopters. The sailor's name is being withheld, while the search exact location was not disclosed.
Building on the multilateral trade system. Since 2006, BRICS countries have created a new paradigm for mutual benefit among emerging and developing nations. Chinese Commerce Minister Zhong Shan is chairing this year's meeting. He called on BRICS nations to deepen cooperation and explore new avenues.
Safeguarding the multilateral trade system and the rise against protectionism serve the common interest of emerging and developing economies. As the host nation of this year's meeting, China has confidence in implementing the consensus reached by leaders of BRICS nations. The Shanghai meeting will pave way for the Leaders' Summit later this year.
As we've said multiple times, there's no change in our stance in responding in a stern manner to the North's provocations. We believe that U.S. policy on the DPRK also maintains a fundamental position of imposing maximum pressure and intervention. In the last U.S.-South Korea joint summit statement, the two leaders clarified that they do not have a hostile DPRK policy. And in a speech in Berlin about ideas on establishing peace on the Korean peninsula, our president also said that we do not want the collapse of the DPRK, and that we do not pursue absorption, reunification, or artificial reunification. We think that the U.S. stance does not differ greatly from ours.
The minister emphasized that Seoul continues to pursue a policy of dialogue with Pyongyang. His comments come after U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham said on television that a war with the DPRK is an option if the regime continues to threaten the U.S. with an ICBM.
The U.S. Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, says America does not seek to topple the North Korean government and would like dialogue with Pyongyang, but only with the understanding that it could never be a nuclear power.
Well, good afternoon, all. And we're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy, we're not your threat, but you are presenting an unacceptable threat to us, and we have to respond. And we hope that at some point they will begin to understand that.
Look at President Trump.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders faced questions from the U.S. media about Donald Trump's stance on North Korea.
Look, the president obviously has been very outspoken about how he feels about North Korea. We're weighing all options, keeping all options on the table. And as we've said many times before, we're not going to broadcast what we're going to do until that happens.
These developments come just days after South Korea and the United States held a joint military exercise in South Korea, just 15 miles from the North Korean border.
Star with more. What else are we hearing about this?
Well, it looks like this Air France flight was about 50 to 60 or so miles away when the missile splashed down. In aviation terms, we are told that is not a near miss, but it is a concern. And the reason is because the North Koreans, as they continue their very aggressive missile testing program, they're firing into areas where it is very heavily trafficked with both commercial air traffic and commercial shipping. And of course, off the coast of Japan, off that northern coast of Japan, that is a very busy area. And when the North Koreans, as you just pointed out, do not follow international protocols many times. They don't issue a notice to mariners or a notice to airmen that there's a restricted area that they're going to be conducting their activities in. And that is what the big concern is here right now. This latest case actually leading Air France to take a very unusual step and issue a public statement about what happened to reassure people. Air France saying, and let me quote, "North Korea's missile test zones do not interfere in any way with Air France flight paths. We constantly analyze potentially dangerous flyover zones.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson made a surprise appearance today at the State Department briefing where he told reporters he wants to, quote, have a dialogue with North Korea. Correspondent Rich Edson was one of those reporters. He joins us from the State Department. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Brett. And Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the United States seeks no collapse of the Kim regime in North Korea, nor regime change in North Korea. 6 months after assuming office, the Secretary of State offered an assessment of the department's work and challenges under his leadership, and he led with North Korea.
We're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy, we're not your threat, but you are presenting an unacceptable threat to us, and we have to respond. And we hope that at some point they will begin to understand that, and that we would like to sit and have a dialogue with them about the future that will give them the security they seek and the future economic prosperity for North Korea.
Tillerson also says the U.S. does not blame China for the situation in North Korea, though argues China can influence North Korea in ways no other country can. And with Russia announcing it would eject more than 750 U.S. diplomats from the country, Tillerson says he warned Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov the relationship between Russia and the U.S. could get worse, and it just did. Secretary Tillerson also noted differences with President Trump with the Iran nuclear deal as those in the administration push for the U.S. to walk away from it. Tillerson says that because many of the concessions in the deal were front-loaded, the U.S. has few levers available to it when dealing with the constraints of the Iran nuclear deal. Brett?
Rich Edson, live at the State Department. Rich, thank you.
Well, the tense situation with North Korea is getting worse. The U.S. military is now conducting an intercontinental ballistic missile test after North Korea's latest missile test sparked concern around the world. Jackie Ibanez has more on that. Jackie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cheryl. Well, the U.S. Air Force's latest intercontinental ballistic missile test expected to launch sometime over the next few hours. This will be the fourth ICBM test from Vandenberg Air Force Base this year. The missile will travel more than 4,000 miles, landing in the western Pacific Ocean. It comes just days after North Korea fired its longest missile yet, crashing into the Sea of Japan. The flight path missing a passenger jet by, get this, just 10 minutes. New research shows the rogue nation's arsenal could reach major U.S. cities in under an hour. However, the rockets would likely break apart before hitting anything, so that's the good news. Scientists who study earthquakes also finding seismic activity thought to be caused by nuclear tests by dictator Kim Jong-un. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson calling tactics like flying B-1 bombers over the region, quote, peaceful pressure, and opened the door to negotiations with the out-of-control leader. Listen to this.
The condition of those talks is there is no future where North Korea holds nuclear weapons or the ability to deliver those nuclear weapons to anyone in the region, much less to the homeland.
Secretary Tillerson also calling on China to raise the pressure on its neighboring communist nation. Meanwhile, South Korea is increasing its military presence on the border, but China is likely to object and stay away from the negotiating table. The U.S. military now reporting it has detected highly unusual and unprecedented levels of North Korean submarine activity, and more missile tests are expected in the future. Cheryl?
From the North Koreans and hopefully from the U.S. as well,
yeah.
Jackie.
It's fair to say U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson talks to the press a lot less frequently than most of his predecessors. But as he marks 6 months in office, a first, he came to his own briefing room. And on North Korea, he tried to send a reassuring message.
We do not seek an accelerated reunification of the peninsula. We do not seek an excuse to send our military north of the 38th parallel. And we're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy.
But the administration, once again, doesn't seem to be on the same page. President Donald Trump had said he was looking at what he called severe options in response to 2 intercontinental ballistic missile tests from North Korea. And U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham says the president is considering a military response.
There will be a war with North Korea over their missile program if they continue to try to hit America with an ICBM. He has told me that. I believe him, and if I were China, I would believe him too, and do something about it. You can stop North Korea militarily or diplomatically. I prefer the diplomatic approach, but they will not be allowed to have a missile to hit America with a nuclear weapon on top, and to allow them to do that is really abandoning Homeland Security.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz is also sending a different message, penning this op-ed calling for the U.S. to push for a coup in North Korea. Still, the secretary says he wants to talk, but with the same preconditions his predecessors put on any negotiations.
We don't think having a dialogue where the North Koreans come to the table assuming they're going to maintain their nuclear weapons is productive. Seek an excuse to send our military north of the 38th parallel. We're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy, we're not your threat.
Every military expert says there is no good military option.
They're wrong. There is a military option to destroy North Korea's program and North Korea itself. He's not going to allow President Trump the ability of this madman to have a missile to hit America. If there's going to be a war to stop him, it will be over there. If thousands die, they're going to die over there. They're not going to die here. And he's told me that to my face. And that may be provocative, but not really.
Well, I wouldn't judge Donald Trump by his looks or indeed what he says. Donald Trump is ready for war in this case. He's seen the Pentagon's various plans, and in all likelihood they've already selected one and settled on a battle plan. The gears are now in motion, and what Senator Lindsey Graham says is, it only goes to reinforce that. If millions have to die, so be it.
Are you saying it's okay to use a military option that immediately endangers the lives of millions of people in that region?
I'm saying it's inevitable unless North Korea changes.
If you have any doubts that the United States is preparing for war, look at what's happening on the ground. U.S. troops, jets, various forces are arriving to South Korea in an endless stream. Anti-air missile systems are blanketing the airspace, and there are endless war games, simulations, exercises all around North Korea, carried out by the United States, its allies, and South Korea. This isn't about scaring North Korea. That can't be done. This is about putting all the pieces into place so that when the final go order comes, everybody's ready. After all, Donald Trump promised to deal with North Korea. Didn't say how.
We'll handle North Korea. We're going to be able to handle them. It will be handled. We handle everything.
Learning more about the U.S. this morning testing an unarmed intercontinental ballistic missile just days after North Korea fired its latest ICBM into the Sea of Japan. Air Force officials say the U.S. test was long planned and not in response to the rogue regime's latest launch.